Before I dive into this story, I want to give you a warning. What you're about to hear involves the raw realities of betrayal, the pain of broken families, and the difficult truths of love, loss, and trust. If these themes feel too heavy for you, I recommend stepping away now. My name is Elena Warren, and I'm 52 years old. Looking back at my life, I often feel like I've lived several lifetimes in one. If someone had told me 10 years ago that this would be my story, I would have laughed in disbelief. But here I am, sitting in my quiet kitchen on a calm morning, staring into a half-empty cup of coffee, trying to make sense of the last decade of my life. For the last 8 years, it's been just me and my son, Warren. When his father walked out on us, Warren was only 10 years old. That day was the beginning of everything unraveling. I still remember his face. He didn't cry, not a single tear, but I saw the pain in his eyes, that quiet, searching gaze out the window, as if he was waiting for his father to return. Even though deep down he probably knew he never would. It broke me. That same day, I made myself a promise. I vowed that no matter what, Warren would never feel abandoned again. I would be his anchor. I would give him a sense of home, even if it was just the two of us against the world. That vow became the foundation of my life. It was what kept me moving on the hardest days, even when I felt like collapsing. For years, I thought I had managed to hold it all together. Warren was such a sweet boy, polite, thoughtful, always trying to help me. He was different from the other kids, quieter, softer, almost too gentle for this harsh world. But time has a way of changing things. When Warren turned 18, it felt like everything shifted. Suddenly, he wasn't my little boy anymore. He was standing at the threshold of adulthood, trying to figure out who he was. But instead of spreading his wings, he withdrew further into himself. He didn't have many friends. He didn't go out like most teenagers. He spent most of his time at home, hiding his thoughts behind a mask of indifference. Whenever I asked him if he was lonely, he would shrug and mutter, "I'm fine, but mothers know." And I knew he wasn't fine. Then one night, he said something that shook me. We were sitting in the living room, the TV murmuring in the background. He turned to me and asked a question I never expected. "Mom, why did Dad really leave us?" I froze. My chest tightened. For years, I had danced around that answer, giving him vague responses like things didn't work out or your father had his own issues. But at that moment, looking into his eyes, I knew he was old enough to hear the truth. So I told him that his father had been unfaithful, that the marriage hadn't ended because of small disagreements or bad timing, but because his father chose betrayal. Warren sat in silence. His face didn't move, but I could see the storm raging behind his eyes. He whispered, "So he picked someone else over us." And that's when I realized my son wasn't just grieving the absence of a father. He was grieving the betrayal of a family. From that night on, our relationship shifted. Warren began asking more questions about love, loyalty, and whether people could ever truly be trusted. And here's where my mistake comes in. When he turned 18, I did something I thought would help him, something I thought would give him clarity and strength. But now, looking back, I'm not sure if I did the right thing. I introduced Warren to the truth, not just about his father's betrayal, but about my own mistakes too. I told him that after the divorce, I had also fallen into relationships that weren't always healthy. I had looked for comfort in the wrong places, made choices out of fear and loneliness rather than love. I wanted to teach him that adults aren't perfect, that we stumble and fall, but we can always rise again. But what I didn't realize was how much he was internalizing every word. At first, things seemed fine. Warren was quieter, yes, but he wasn't shutting me out completely. In fact, he was opening up more. He told me about the pressure he felt to become a man, how he didn't know what kind of person he wanted to be, and how terrified he was of repeating his father's mistakes. I listened. I comforted him. I thought we were building something stronger, but then I made a choice that changed everything. I started dating again. His name was Julian Hart. He was charming, warm, and had this laugh that could light up a room. For the first time in years, I felt alive again. I felt like a woman, not just a mother, trying to hold everything together. Julian started coming around more often. Dinners, weekends, then nights that turned into mornings. I thought Warren would be fine with it. After all, I had been upfront with him. I reminded him of the deal we had always had, that I wouldn't hide things from him and that we could talk about anything. But Warren wasn't fine. At first, he stayed quiet, watching from a distance. But as Julian's presence grew, so did Warren's resentment. He started snapping at me over small things: groceries, chores, even the way I laughed at Julian's jokes. I told myself it was just adjustment, that he'd get used to it. I was wrong. One night, Warren came into the living room while Julian and I were laughing on the couch. He stood there, silent at first, before finally blurting out, "Does it even matter to you anymore? What this is doing to me?" His voice cracked, but his words cut like a knife. I tried to calm him down, but he went on, fists clenched at his sides. "You act like I don't exist. You act like none of this affects me. Do you even care what it feels like watching someone else take my dad's place? Watching you pretend like everything's normal when it's not?" Julian froze, awkward and uncomfortable, before quietly excusing himself. But Warren and I stayed, locked in a storm of words and emotions we had both been avoiding for too long. That night, I realized something devastating. In my pursuit of happiness, I had ignored the pain my son was carrying. I had been so focused on proving that I could rebuild my life that I forgot he was still trying to piece his together. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Warren retreated to his room, and I sat alone in the kitchen, replaying every mistake I had made. Finally, I knocked on his door. My voice shook as I whispered, "I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much I was hurting you. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I see now I wasn't listening. We need help, Warren. Both of us." To my relief, he let me in. And for the first time, we agreed to face our pain together. We started therapy. Real, difficult, messy therapy. At first, we barely spoke. The silence in that office was suffocating. But over time, Warren began to open up. He admitted to feeling abandoned, angry, and terrified of becoming like his father. He admitted he resented me for moving on while he still felt stuck. I cried more in those sessions than I had in years. But through those tears, we found understanding. Therapy taught us about boundaries, about communication, and about forgiveness, not just of each other, but of ourselves. Warren began journaling, joining a martial arts class, and slowly building a life outside of me. And I learned to let go, to stop trying to control everything, and to trust that he could stand on his own. Months later, we sat on the balcony watching the sunset. Warren looked at me and said softly, "Thanks, Mom, for trying, for not giving up on me, even when I didn't make it easy." I squeezed his hand, tears blurring my vision. The road ahead isn't perfect. Healing never is. But for the first time in years, I feel hope. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that betrayal doesn't have to define you. Mistakes don't have to define you. What matters is what you do next, how you rebuild, how you forgive, and how you move forward. Boundaries matter. Honesty matters. And above all, love real, patient, imperfect love matters most. So, I'll leave you with this question. If your world fell apart like mine did, what would you do? Would you try to rebuild? Or would you walk away? Let me know in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this one, because sometimes the hardest stories to tell are the ones we need to hear the most.